What's up, Studcast fans? It is time for Southeastern Rewind's Tell Me More. Hey, it's David Summers with the Tennessee stud Ron Fuller answering 5 questions from the latest Studcast, now available on Ron's new home on YouTube. The 5 questions on this edition of Tell Me More come from Studcast episode number 007, number 7, the original 7th ever Studcast. It's called Ron is Drowning, episode number 7. Now, remember to find Southeastern Rewind on YouTube, subscribe, ring the bell to get reminders on when the greatest stories in wrestling will be dropped on YouTube. And be sure to tell your friends about Southeastern Rewind. Hey, Ron, this Southeastern Rewind, it is beginning to blow up, and it's your future home on YouTube.
Yes, it certainly is, Dave. And, I got to make a little apology here before we get started into this one. We're a day or two late on this one because I live up here in the mountains. And, when you're in the mountains, I think you have a little more problems with some of the technological things that we all take for granted this day and time. And my Wi-Fi was out for a couple of days. I could not get it done, and I couldn't record. So, we may be a day or so behind on this one, but this is the answers to question number, this is questions from number 7,
Right.
original Studcast. And we're going to get it done for you today. And I think you're going to really like this one. This is going to be a pretty extra good one, as a matter of fact.
All right, I'm not going to say that you're that deep in the woods, but does Saturday Night Live come on by Tuesday?
Yeah, usually,
Right.
This particular week, it actually was 2 days late,
Okay.
So I didn't just lose my Wi-Fi. I lost TV too.
Right,
So,
yeah. Okay.
It was a little tough, man. Up in the mountains, it's a little isolated anyway.
Right.
It pays to have some TV and an opportunity to get on the internet. So
Cool deal. All right. So we got 5 questions. You ready to do it?
heck yeah, man.
Hey, listen, I'm intrigued by the title, too. The title of this particular episode was called Ron is Drowning. And if you haven't heard it, and I just listened to this thing the other day, this was a serious situation. You were a small guy. I mean, how old were you when you were thrown into the pond?
About 10 years old.
And it could have been the end for the Tennessee stud. So if you haven't heard it, it is available right now at youtube.com. And of course, under Southeastern Rewind. And you can also find it at tnstud.com. Episode number 7. It is a ton of fun, and it's a little shocking, a little unbelievable. It's called Ron is Drowning. Okay, so are you ready for 5 questions, stud?
I am, my man.
All right, let's jump in. And Tommy Henry Sr. has question number 1. Can you tell the story of a match between Ronnie Garvin and Roy Lee Welch, who is your cousin, of course, where I believe a fan got involved somehow and got pile-drived by Ronnie Garvin? Tommy goes on to say, I think it happened at Chilhowie Park. What's the deal on that?
Wow, that's a tremendous question. And gosh, I remember the incident just like that. More so than actually whether it was at Chilhowie Park or at the Coliseum. But, this is a great question. And I know this question, if you're out there and you're a today's fan with today's wrestling, you find this to be a bit unthinkable. Ronnie Garvin pile-drived a fan, I mean, but that could, you probably thinking that could never happen. Because, no way can today's wrestling fan have any concept of how a heel could get that kind of heat. I understand that. And, it's enough, when back in the day, heels used to draw those fans not only out of their seats, but, sometimes inside the ring.
Wow.
So, well, yeah, that's pretty crazy, Dave. But that happened a lot of times. In fact, I got cut in Panama City in the ring.
Panama City Beach, Florida. Panama City, Florida.
How heat can get.
Okay, you're not talking about the country of Panama. You're talking about Panama City, Florida.
Panama City, Florida. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm talking about Panama City in the United States of America, man.
Okay.
Inside the ring, I got knifed.
Right. Okay.
So, it happened back in those days. So back before there were barriers of any kind, like today, I mean, you've got barriers everywhere to keep you from getting up to the ring.
Yeah.
Back in the old days, I'm sure these new fans can't even imagine what it's like not to have any type of barrier. And when wrestling fans they got mad enough to get out of their seats, they would sometimes come to the apron of the ring, and sometimes they would just pop into the ring. So it did happen, this incident, and I'm going to explain all of it.
All right, I know this is going to be good, but the barrier literally was the front row of ringside seats.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the aisleway had no barriers in it. And
Right.
actually,
Yes. Yeah.
We finally started putting barriers in front of the front row,
Yeah.
all the way around the ring.
Right.
But that was probably in the 1980s before we got this far.
And as you guys,
this incident happened in 1978.
Yeah, and as you guys came to the ring, fans could reach out and touch you on the arm or that kind of thing, or
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, they could pat you on the back,
Yeah.
or stick a knife in you.
Yeah, oh yeah. Okay.
If you were coming from the wrong dressing room. But so it was a whole new ball game back in there.
Yeah,
In those
yeah.
days, So I want to start this answer off with the year in which it occurred. And I'm pretty sure this was 1978. And it was another tremendous year for Southeastern. The crowds were absolutely phenomenal that entire year. And just about all the heels for the entire year were steadily on fire, man. They all had problems similar to what this one is going to turn out to be. So Ronnie Garvin, just to back up a little bit and kind of set the stage here for this question, Ronnie Garvin had arrived in 1976 as a heel. He came in with the manager, Big Bad John. John left in early 1977, and he's actually the only guy I ever gave a notice to for a lifestyle problem. And that left Garvin without a manager. And for the first time in his career, Rob and I convinced him he could do it. He began to do his own interviews. He had tremendous heat, and all was going great for Garvin and Southeastern in 1978. So then late in February of 1977, this is when Ronnie had already jumped off the top rope on my throat on the Terry Funk match back in October of '76. He had jumped off the throat in a lot of throats, man, during that time frame. And so Ronnie met with my brother and I. We were booking in February of '77 and had a personal problem at home in Montreal, and he had to go home to Canada. He gave us a 4-week notice. They gave us the date he was leaving, and he also gave us the disastrous news that he might never be returning.
Hey, I like where you're headed on this, the way you're setting up this question or the answer, because Garvin in '76 and early '77, he was terrific as a heel. I mean, as you're explaining. But what you did next to use him as best you could to get somebody else over was really, really cool and very smart.
Yes. Well, I appreciate that, Dave. I mean, and good things sometimes come from desperation. And we were in a desperate position. We were losing the top heel with a short notice, which means that we're not going to have a chance to get anybody else over very strongly to replace him. And when that usually happened for bookers and for territories, that meant your crowds are going to take a dramatic drop until you can get some heat established again. So Rob and I, man, we sat and put on those booker hats and we dug really deep. And we actually became real bookers, man, during this time frame because of this incident here with Ronnie Garvin. We had no choice. We were losing one of our top heels, and we were going to be short on heels. And so we had to figure out real quick, what are we going to do here?
Mm-hmm.
So in order to get as much heat as possible on one of the remaining heels that was left when Garvin left, the guys that were still going to be there, Rob and I went out on a limb. We decided to turn Ronnie Garvin babyface, and we picked the heel we wanted to put the most heat on. And we wanted that guy to be the reason that Garvin had to leave after he was a babyface. In order for this to work, we had to get Ronnie Garvin over as a babyface. We only had 2 weeks with him as a babyface before we put him in a loser-leave Southeastern match with Bob Orton Jr. And in that match, in March of 1977, Bob Orton Jr. sent Ronnie Garvin out of Southeastern Wrestling. And we never knew whether he was ever going to return or not. So a couple of weeks after this loser leave town match, we found out from a call from Ronnie Garvin to us that that he was going to be able to come back. So we're going to be able to bring him back. 5 weeks after he left in a loser leave town match, he returns, and we put a mask on him because he can't come back as Ronnie Garvin. He lost the loser leave town. We put a mask on him. We call him Mr. Knoxville. He got over just as strong under that hood as the 2 weeks that he had turned babyface before he left. Then along came Big Joe LeDuc. And our decision to use Joe LeDuc as a babyface meant we really were overloaded then in great babyfaces, and we were short in great heels. So that created another booking problem for us. So we gave Joe LeDuc this story about his brother Paul breaking his neck, getting his neck broke by Ronnie Garvin and Bob Orton Jr. They were tag partners out there in Middle America. And it was the beginning of something rarely done in wrestling at that time, or maybe ever in the history of the sport. Only 1 month after Garvin returned on the mask as Mr. Knoxville, we figured a way to turn one of the hottest baby faces ever in Southeastern at that point back heel again. So, we had to, because now we got Joe LeDuc and all the strong baby faces. We need more heels over there. So it not only worked at this angle that we did, but it set business on fire again. Bob Orton Jr., Mr. Knoxville, Ronnie Garvin under the mask became the Southeastern Tag Champions. And during the course of their long run with these titles, they are going to become the best heel team probably in Knoxville wrestling history. And that brings Ronnie Garvin's history in Southeastern up to where we are at this present day point with our regular Studcast. We're in June of 1977. Ronnie Garvin and Bob Orton Jr. have just won the Southeastern Tag Championships. So let's back up and let's introduce the other guy in this question, and that was Roy Lee Welch. And to, so that everyone can better understand the answer to this question that I'm going to be giving here. So Roy Lee comes from the same Welch family as I do. He's actually a cousin, second cousin. He is Lester Welch's son. Lester was my father's uncle, my dad's uncle, and my granddad's brother. So Roy Lee arrived in Southeastern the first week in August of 1977. He was a little shorter and a little less muscular than the other family members like me and Rob and Jimmy, but it didn't affect his work in the ring. He became an absolute force as a babyface in Knoxville. Fans loved him, so much so that many of them tried to help him in his battles against much larger and more violent foes, such as Ronnie Garvin. And I hope listeners, didn't mind this little small history lesson before we answer the first question in this Tell Me More show, Dave. But so just so that we can be reminded again that we kind of set the stage. Ronnie Garvin's been a heel. He's been a babyface. Now he's back as a heel. In comes my cousin, Roy Lee Welch. And there's going to be a significant thing happen in Southeastern's history. And Dave, how about give us that question again?
Ron, I forgot what. No, I'm kidding. All right. that was one hell of a setup. All right, so the question was, and it comes from Tommy. Can you tell the story of a match between Ronnie Garvin and Roy Lee Welch, where I believe a fan got involved somehow and got pile-drived by Ronnie Garvin? And he says, I think it happened at Chilhowie Park.
Okay, so we've got an incident here that's history making, right? And, and I was watching this match in 1978, and I'm pretty sure it was in 1978. And Ronnie Garvin was still an extremely hot heel in Southeastern. And we had a lot of fans in those days that were into the matches so much that they were trying to get in the ring sometimes, and they would get down to the ring often. Fans would end up right there at the ring aprons on a lot of matches, and the policemen trying to get them to go back to their seats. And occasionally someone would get in the actual ring itself. And, to help wrestlers they loved. And Roy Lee Welch was one of those wrestlers, man. And but it was the worst place that the fan could be caught was in that wrestling ring. So Ronnie and Roy Lee had a real long program when this happened against each other over weeks and weeks. And it was probably the most one-sided match in Southeastern history, with Roy Lee kind of small and frail in some respects, and in the ring with Ronnie Garvin. But Roy Lee refused to be beaten. I mean, and Garvin punished him in so many matches, and Roy Lee would not quit. He would not be counted out. So he fought so hard in their matches that fans grew to love him for his tremendous heart, man. He just showed so much heart against Ronnie Garvin. And the match, I think, Tommy, our questioner here, was the one in which this happened. Ronnie Garvin broke Roy Lee Welch's arm in this match. And it was an absolutely brutal match. And like I said, I watched it, and I think it was in the Coliseum. Seems like I was back behind the curtains, but I don't know if it's at Coliseum or the Park for sure. But Garvin worked on Roy's arm during this entire match. And I don't recall right now, which building it was in, but I do recall at the end of the match, fans in the stands and in the ringside were screaming for Roy to give up. Give up, Roy, give up. They had seen enough. They knew he was in tremendous pain. So many of them had started to get out of their seats, and they come down to the ring itself. So, and back in those days, there were no barriers around the ring to keep them back. So the police were there, and that was their job. They would come down to ringside too, and they were nice to fans. They would realize that they're so into the match, most of them didn't know they were at the ring. They didn't know where they were. They were just so into it. And the police would kind of turn them around and point back up into the stands and say, go, get back up there.
Yeah.
And they try to send them back to their seats, obviously, and away from the ring. So Mike, the referee in this match, he disqualified Garvin because Garvin wouldn't release Roy Lee from this extremely punishing hold he had on him. And Garvin hammerlocked Roy many times in the match and dropped knees while they were on the mat together on his arm, and twisted his arm up his back. But then finally he took Roy's arm and he drove it up his back, and then he picked him up. He ran his arm up through Roy's arms and hooked it onto his shoulder, and he actually lifted Roy with all of his weight up into the air and hung him with that one arm.
Whoa.
And then he threw him over his back and hung him on his back with one arm. It was one of the most horrible holds I had ever seen.
Well, listen,
I was like, God,
yeah,
he's breaking his arm.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. So the crowd, I mean, obviously, listen, Roy Lee was not up to Garvin's potential at that time. So right. If Garvin was a 10, Roy Lee was what? Maybe a 7, a 6? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe even a 5.
So the crowd knew that their hero was outgunned.
Oh yeah.
So they were. That's how deep into it they were. I mean, when you say the crowd's telling Roy Lee to give up, wow, they knew. Yeah. They knew he was in trouble.
They knew he was in trouble too, man, and they're wanting to stop it, because they could see what I was seeing. He's going to break his arm. He's going to break his arm right there in the ring in this match.
So that's the emotional connection that the crowd is hanging on to this. It's not a fight, but to this match. But anyway, continue. So now you know kind of now I know the motivation of the crowd. Go ahead.
Yeah, the crowd is just on fire. They can't stand it anymore, and they have screamed and begged Roy to stop it, Roy.
Wow.
You don't have to win this match. You don't have to get your arm broke. And he just wouldn't quit. He wouldn't quit. And so then Garvin, he took Roy. The referee saw that Roy wasn't going to give, and the referee, being Mac, he had sympathy for him, and he told the ref to ring the bell. He stopped the match. He in other words, Roy refused to say, I give up, I quit. But Mac wanted to save his arm, And so Mac says, ring the bell, ring the bell.
So Mac
And,
Mac called the match. That's it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Mac
okay.
at this point, he hears the fans' reaction. He knows himself. He's never seen this thing that Ronnie's doing to Roy.
Yeah.
He knows that, God, this is going to break his arm.
Yeah.
And, he wouldn't let it happen. So he took it upon himself to basically just stop the match. He's going to raise Garvin's hand.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and when he did, and they started ringing the bell, he was trying to get Garvin to let loose, but Garvin wouldn't let loose. He wanted to break his arm.
Damn.
So, then when that happened, then then Garvin dropped Roy and he knocked Mike Murray out of the ring. Now it's just Roy and Garvin in the ring. And then after he knocked McMurray out of the ring, he slammed Roy in the middle of the ring, and he took his arm that he had been working on and he laid it flat across the mat, and he went up the top rope. He's going to jump off on it. Okay.
Whoa.
And normally it's the neck, but he's determined, I'm going to finish this arm. And a couple of the fans, these fans were all around the ring at this point, and a couple of them jumped up on the ring apron about the time he started up the top rope, and the cops drug him off the apron, and it's getting we're at a riot stage. We're real close to a riot stage in this deal, right? And so then the police jerks him off, and then and Garvin ends up on the top rope, and he jumps off on Roy's arm. And as he was about to leave the top rope to jump off, this fan shot underneath the bottom ropes, and he popped up on his feet. Garvin landed with his knee on Roy's arm. And when he stood up, there they were, the Mark and Garvin face to face in the ring. And then to make matters worse, the fan took a swing at Ronnie. And Ronnie ducked it. And then Ronnie retaliated, man. He hit him with one of those fists of stone, man, that he was known for. And the punch hit this guy, man, right on the chin. And the fan, he rocked backward. He was instantly knocked cold, but he was still on his feet. And he kind of rocked backward, and Garvin reached and caught him by the back of his neck, before he let him fall to the mat. And he bent him forward, and when he bent him forward, the guy just kind of slid his head right between Ronnie's legs, and Ronnie just grabbed him, reached and grabbed him in the pile driver position and picked him up.
Whoa.
So he's knocked him out. Now he's going to pile drive him.
So he's
going to kill him.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm watching back there, man. And I'm like, oh, no, Ronnie, no, God, no. I mean, the guy can't protect himself. It's a tense moment, man.
Yeah.
So that was exactly what it appeared was going to happen. But there's these policemen that are dragging him off the apron. They see this guy, and boy, they were fast too. They shot in the ring, and Garvin's got him up, and all he has to do is drop on his rear end, man, and jam his head through the mat.
Mm-hmm.
And they grab the guy from Ronnie, and they drag him out of Ronnie's hands, and then they drag him out on the floor. And you can see he's out cold.
Mm-hmm.
He's just laying there. So.
So Garvin had him set to drop him on his head, and the dude was saved by the cops.
Yeah.
Okay, so he didn't finish the move.
Yeah, didn't finish the move. And you probably got more questions.
I've got more questions. And listen, but Ronnie Garvin, he would have had the right. If you step into that ring, that's like you're playing with fire. You're messing with a snake.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The guy's hurt, man. And, that there's a heck of a lot going on in the ring at that point.
Right. Wow. So, all right. So I do have more questions. What did the cops do? If anything, did this cost, how much did it cost you? It's kind of like the Danny Hodge and the Dale Lewis event back in 1975, right?
There you go.
Right.
There you go. The guy was hurt. Obviously, he's already not cold, and what did the cops do? They did their job. They drugged the guy out, and the medical crew came down to assist. He was unconscious, and they waited on Ronnie to get out on the floor, and they took him to the dressing room. And as far as that costing a bunch of money from Hodge and the Lewis deal, it could have gone that way, and
right.
Gosh, you got your horse, Mr. Pickles, almost running away with you, man. You got to slow him down again, man.
Yeah.
So guys out, the medical staff's working on him. The police are taking Ronnie back to the dressing room, and there's an army of mad fans on the way. I mean, people are throwing stuff, and it's a near riot. It's a near riot, and the cops prevented it from happening.
But this guy took his life in his own hands when he steps in there and is eye to eye with Ronnie Garvin. So
yeah, and that's why it didn't cost me any money,
right?
Like the incident that happened in 1975 with Danny Hodge and with Dale Lewis.
Yeah,
that cost me some money. But in this instance was different, because this time the fan jumps into the ring, the fan throws a punch at the wrestler, and in that match back in 75, the fan had agreed to come into the ring and wrestle to try to win money. This time he's got no business being there, and he's got no recourse when he goes to court, because when you stepped inside those ropes, you were in the wrong place. And so did the courts recognize that fact.
And like it or not, Ronnie Garvin had 5,000 or 6,000 people that would have to say, well, that boy swung at him first.
Yeah. I mean, everybody saw that.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's on video.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
We were filming back in those days practically every match.
So the cops had to be like, dude, you asked for it. So.
Yeah, that's it. I'm sure when they came to and the guy started, well, when are you going to arrest him? They're like, oh, no.
Yeah. What
to
about?
Kind of finish this thing off, Dave. Roy's arm was broken. He's got his arm broken in this match.
God,
okay.
Yeah.
And,
okay.
And 2 weeks later, I want to give you a little ending to this. It's pretty cool in a way, Roy's got his arm broken. Garvin is still bragging about it, wanting more of him. And 2 weeks after this match, he comes on TV and he's wearing a mask and he challenges Garvin to a return match.
What?
Right? Well, yeah. Wait a minute now. You got to hear this. This is pretty cool. So, and Garvin, then he says, Garvin says, he's in another studio, and he goes, of course I'll give you a match. He goes, I just broke your arm. And he goes, I can't wait to break it again. I've never broken the same arm twice. Hell yes, I'll give you the match. So then Roy says, the only deal is, he says, I want to have one partner. And so Garvin says, so you and a partner want to wrestle against me. And Roy says, that's right.
Uh-huh.
And Garvin says, pick anybody you want, because I'm going to get to break your arm again. Right.
Okay. All right. So what happened? Who'd he pick?
Well, the fans, the fans are supposed to ask the question today, but that's a question for another time, actually. But I am going to tell you, man. I should not tell you, man, but I got to tell you because this one is good. They on that Friday night after that television, Ronnie Garvin goes to the ring first, and they ring the bell, and Roy Lee comes down to the ring with Andre the Giant.
Oh wait, are you kidding me? Holy cow!
Andre the Giant against Ronnie Garvin by himself.
Had it been announced before that?
No.
Are you kidding?
It was Roy Lee and a mystery partner versus
Oh my
Ronnie
God. The crowd just, holy cow.
Oh, the crowd popped, obviously. It was like, oh my God, look who he's got, right?
Yeah.
And, oddly enough, Dave, we're going to get to this match as the Studcast gets to this point pretty soon in 1978.
Okay. Yeah.
The Andre and Ronnie Garvin match. And Dave, it was one of the greatest matches I ever saw in my entire life.
Wow.
Ronnie Garvin almost beat Andre the Giant.
That is, Wow. Okay.
It's an amazing story. It was an amazing match, and I'm sure somewhere on YouTube there is that match, Ronnie Garvin against
Wow.
Andre the Giant.
That is.
And I mean, Garvin does everything to him. Jumps off the top rope in his throat, hits him with chairs. I mean, just does everything to the Giant that anybody could do.
Holy cow. All right, that is an incredible way to start off this Tell Me More show, Ron. All right, this is the second question of the day comes from S. Byrne, 1970, who must be a Twitter fan, and he says, Ron, I know your father didn't express his feelings very often, but was there ever a moment where either you knew he was proud of you for something you had done, or he told you he was proud of you for something you had done?
That's a great question there, man. Gosh, because my dad, as this guy picked up, obviously, the fact that Dad never expressed many feelings, that's for darn sure.
Mm-hmm.
So and off the top of my head here, two instances come to mind. And the first time I knew he was proud of me was after a basketball game that was in the middle of the season in my senior year. And my father never pushed me to play basketball. And in fact, he hated that I played basketball, because I was 6'6" and about 200 pounds as a senior in high school, and I was pretty skinny. And he kept saying, that game just makes you skinnier, man. So you're never going to become a wrestler, man, if you play basketball. So, and at that point in my life, he had never seen me play a single game. Until this particular game in Atlanta at Christmas time in 1965. And so he came to the championship tournament finals of a Christmas tournament in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was playing school. I was playing for Briarcliff, and we were playing against the team who was hosting the tournament called Cross Keys. Two Class 5 big schools in Atlanta, Georgia. And so my dad showed up, and he never said anything to me about it. He just came that night. And I wasn't ever aware he was even in the gym. Right?
So he was just sitting in the stands?
Sitting in the stands. He
Okay.
just got him a seat in the stands. And by sheer accident, he ends up sitting next to a sports writer for the major newspaper in Atlanta, which was the Atlanta Constitution at that time.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then they started to talk during the game. Finally, the guy says, hey, who are you? You big guy, what do you do? And Dad told him, he said, hey, I'm a wrestler named Buddy Fuller. And the writer goes, oh, I know that name. We write about you, man. But the writer didn't make a big deal out of it. And, and then my father, they must have sat there for a while. My dad tells me about this later, but my father, he finally asked the guy, well, why are you here? You're a sports writer. What are you doing here at a high school basketball game? And he told Dad, he said, I've been assigned to do this game because there's a really good player on this Briarcliff team that maybe is going to become all-state player. They think this kid's going to be an all-state player. So naturally, Dad says, well, who's that? Who's that guy? And he says, his name is Ronald Welch.
Whoa, okay.
So Dad introduced himself as Fuller. So the writer didn't put two and two together, So then Dad said, well, hey, that's my son.
Wow.
So we won the game and we won the tournament. And that night I had 22 points and 22 rebounds. I won the player of the tournament trophy for the entire tournament after the game.
Wow.
And so when the game was over, Dad left and he went home. And I went home on the school bus with my team. I never knew he was even there. So, and he never said anything when I got home about it either, and I had the trophy and I said, hey, look at I won another trophy here, and he's like, hey, make no big deal out of it, right?
You only pulled a double for the night.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good game, right?
Oh, yeah.
22 rebounds, not a bad game.
Yeah.
So the next morning when I get up, I go to the breakfast table and he'd already gone out and he'd bought a newspaper. because he wanted to see what the guy had written, I guess,
Mhm.
and he had opened the page and he set it on the middle of the table, and it was the page where they had the high school events were covered, and it was on like a Saturday morning. Game was
Mhm.
on a Saturday night,
Mhm.
the Sunday morning paper. And there's a big headline across the top of the page. First thing I saw is when I looked down at the paper, it says, "Wrestler's son leads Briarcliff victory."
I remember you telling this story on this Studcast. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean,
Yeah. Oh
some
wow.
old man gets the damn headlines,
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
me, right? So,
Yeah.
so I asked him why. I said, because I didn't know. I said, well, "What, Dad? Why is that? Why is he? Why are you in it?" Right? In other
Yeah.
words, why are you in this story? And he says, "Hey, well, I went to that game last night and I watched you, and he says, and after we had that discussion that morning, it was the first moment I ever knew he was proud of me.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
still, he didn't say, 'I'm proud of you.' But I knew once he went and got the paper and he did the whole deal that, he had to be proud of me.
Yeah.
And then I remember the question here was something about, did he ever tell me that he was proud of me?
Uh,
Well, when I think about that, it takes me back to April 28th, 1977, the match I had with Harley Race, with time limit draw, that a lot of people told me for years afterwards the greatest wrestling match they ever saw. And it was the night of the biggest crowd in Knoxville's history for a
mhm.
sports event that
Mhm.
44 years later is still the record crowd for a
Wow.
sports event.
Yeah.
And he waited until that night. He waited until he was there, and he waited until everybody had gone home, and it was just me and him in the dressing room. And we sat down, and he told me it was one of the greatest matches he had ever seen.
Whoa.
He said, "I'm very proud of you." And he said, "Not just for the match, but for the size of that crowd." And he says, "For the wrestling company that you've built here." And
Wow.
so, Mr. S. Byrne, 1970, I couldn't believe it. I began, it kind of began a new relationship between the two of us. And I guess, Dave, we all want that recognition from our father more than anyone else in the world,
Mm.
saying that they're proud of you.
Well, I mean, what young person would not? And you had idolized him your entire life, and when he stops and takes that moment, that your head was swelling big time at that point.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess that's why, when he asked me this question,
Yeah.
it kind of jumped right into my head. Right,
Yeah.
it never happened before,
Yeah.
where he said it, and it never happened afterwards. So,
Well, yeah, I was
thank
going to
goodness it
ask.
did happen once.
Yeah, I
So,
was going to ask if it did happen again. But see, and every man deserves to know how that feels. So that's pretty awesome coming from your father, who, as I said, you idolized for so long and had accomplished so many incredible things. So that's pretty cool. And obviously, that's a moment that will never leave you. So that's
right.
cool. All right, you want to keep going?
Yeah, man.
Let's do it.
Sure.
Question number 3 is a follow-up question to that last one, Ron. Rocco says, how did your mother handle your childhood? Was she the yin to your father's yang as a parent? Was she at all nurturing?
That's another good question. I mean, you know, and the people ask me a lot about my mother, maybe more so than my dad. They expect what a wrestler would be like, but they kind of wonder about a woman that could be married to a wrestler, and how does she handle things. And my mother basically was everything a child could have wanted or needed, man. She was like a mother hen. She took me and old Rob underneath her wing, man. And when my dad got a little bit out of hand and he wanted to do something that was extremely dangerous with us, she told him where to go. and she probably rescued both of us so many times from extreme injuries when he ordered us to do something that we should have never been asked to do. A quick example, I like to give an example.
Mm-hmm.
One time I remember we lived in Mississippi on a lake that was full of water moccasins.
Hmm.
And we knew they were there because we would see them on the banks all the time.
Yeah.
And they're big old fat, terrible looking mean snakes. And so Dad had a stick of dynamite, and he was on his horse, and he threw the dynamite out into the lake, and it exploded. And the few little fish came up, but no snakes. But so and me and Rob are standing there watching it, right? And so then the fish, when the fish started to float to the top, he says, "You and Rob go out there and get those fish." In that water moccasin lake.
Yeah. Yeah. Hurry up.
And and it was summertime. We had our shorts on, I mean, it kind of, for him, it made sense, but my mom had heard the dynamite, and we weren't far from the house. And she came running literally down to the lake just about the time we were knee deep in the water. And she told us to get out of that water. And she said, "Get back to that house." She sent us to the house. And on our way leaving the scene, she told him her favorite line that she used to always say when it came to him doing something dangerous with him. And she said, she screamed at him, and she said, "You're going to kill these boys someday."
Oh my
God. And he was on his horse, man, and he barked right back at her, and he says, "If I do, we'll just get another one."
Yeah. I mean, what's this with your overprotective mom, Ron?
Oh,
come on,
man. Thank God, man. Thank God for her. That wasn't just the first time and the only time she saved us from possible death. But wow,
come on, we'll get another one. What's the deal? Come on.
So yeah, she was. I guess he was going to send us back fishing.
So
if he could have walked away, he would have sent us back fishing.
So what did happen? Did you go back with her? Or you go fishing?
Oh no, we went back with her, man.
She was kind of the boss at that point. Okay, right?
Oh yeah, on that one, I think she realized he's stepping over his bounds here, and that time, man, thankfully we went with her,
Right.
But most times he won that argument, We survived a whole lot of dangerous things, man, including as a 10-year-old, being the kid that was sent off the dam out to cut the top off this giant spillway pipe in the wintertime.
Yeah. All right. So you kind of psychic, because that's the next question. And it's about that very subject. And I heard this story not long ago because I re-listened to number 7. All right. So question number 4 comes from Terry Beaumont in Destin, Florida. And he asked, from the time you got in the water to the time you got out of the water, how much time do you think had passed?
Boy, some good questions today. These people are good, man. When I think back on that day, and it was many, many years ago. I was 10 years old. Gosh, man, we're talking about 60 something years ago, man. I still cringe when I think about that day, and from the time, we were on the dam, me and him, and he told me to open my mouth, and he took that big old long butcher knife and he turned the blade around the opposite direction so it wouldn't cut me. And he said, "Open your mouth," and shoved it in my mouth. It wasn't long after he did that to me, that he just grabbed me and threw me off the dam about halfway to the pipe. I think I came back maybe one time, and he got me again and threw me out there further. So I guess that part of the deal in the water, since the guy's asking about how long was I actually in the water, that probably lasted only about a minute. But I'll tell you what, man, that icy water, man, it was in late November. It was sleeting that day. It had to be 40 degrees or so, man. And I got a bathing suit on, and I got a butcher knife in my mouth. I mean, it's like, wow, this is crazy stuff, right? And it just made every second feel like an eternity, man, when I was in the water. Mm-hmm. And when I got to this big giant pipe, I wrapped my legs around it. And the pipe was freezing cold, because the water had been cold for weeks, right?
God.
So and then and pretty quickly I got at the job, man, because I was freezing, and I started right away jabbing this big butcher knife into this thick cover that was over the top of the pipe, and that was probably 6 inches underwater. So, and it took a little time before I could pierce that cover. Maybe 30 seconds. It might have taken me another 30 seconds before I pierced that cover. But when I pierced that cover, that thing sucked. It disappeared down that 30-foot drop in that pipe that went down 30 feet. And then there was a bend that went all the way through the bottom of the dam before it came out.
A vortex.
And,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can imagine.
Holy cow.
It just started sucking, and it was sucking me. I'm 10 years old. I'm not a big guy. I'm 10 years old. And I know that it horrified my dad. Although I never saw his face, but I heard him scream, and he screamed, "Swim, swim," And so, but you couldn't just turn around and swim like in a lake. You got to swim against that vortex.
Yeah.
God, yeah. You got to get out of that vortex that all that water's going down into that pipe.
Yeah.
If I'd have gone into that pipe, Dave, there's no more Ron.
That was the black hole. Holy cow.
Oh, it's a black hole. It's 30 feet deep.
Yeah.
You hit on your head. Then you turn. If you make it through the crook in the pipe
and go under the dam,
30 seconds out, you're unconscious. You're dead. You're dead.
Yeah, quickly.
Right? You're dead.
Yeah.
So, so I got my feet on that pipe a couple of times, and I pushed off as far as I could, and then swam as hard as I could, just to get away from the pull of the pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Once I got away from the pull of the pipe, I was probably on the dam in less than 20 seconds after that.
Wow.
So I was probably only in the water for about 4 minutes, Mr. Beaumont, I think your name was, But I tell you what, it was the longest 4 minutes of my life, man.
God, a freaking eternity. And it was, how cold do you think outside?
Oh, it was about 40 degrees. I remember it was sleeting when we left the house to go out on the dam.
And you got your swimming trunks on?
Got my swimming trunks on. Yeah. He comes and gets me. I'm watching TV. It's about almost dark. And he says, hey, the dam's going to break. Because the overflow pipe there. I got to get that thing cut off the top of it. Put your bathing suit on. And I'm like, what? And what did you say? Put your bathing suit on.
Yeah, you got to toughen up, son.
Yeah. And then he took me into the kitchen, and he opened the kitchen drawer. And I'm looking in the drawer at all the knives, and I'm thinking, what's going to happen here? What's this all about? And he reaches in and gets the biggest butcher knife in the drawer.
Yeah.
And then we walk out on the dam, and then that's where it all started. So, wow, I don't know how many kids do that in their lifetime, but probably ain't a whole lot of them.
Yeah, there goes little Blackbeard with a butcher knife in his mouth.
Yeah,
holy cow. All right, so that's an amazing story. All right, Stud. So we're at the last question on this Tell Me More show. This is question number 5. This one comes from Rob W. in Seminole, Florida, who wants to know why were you always Grandpa's favorite?
Okay, Dave. I mean, wait a minute. This one here is a little strange, man. Didn't you notice the name on there and where this dude lives?
Yeah. Didn't you live in Seminole?
Hey, yeah. And this dude's name is Rob W.
You have a brother. You have a brother named Rob, right?
Oh. Oh, come on, Rob.
All right. To be honest, in the beginning I was not paying attention, but. That's not Rob. Rob's got too much integrity to do something like that, right?
I don't know, Dave. You can't hardly mix Rob and integrity in the same sentence.
Well, there, I tried.
And if it isn't, Dave, I got to say it'd be the strangest coincidence in all of history. This guy's got my brother's first name. He's got the first initial of his last name, and he lives in the city. Yeah. In which my brother lives.
Hey, Rob, jealous much? All right, I promise I did. All right, so if it's him, are you going to answer? So,
yeah,
why were
I
you
got to
always?
answer him because I'm glad he's
Yeah.
listening to me, man.
Well, I'm gonna do
I'm
this.
kind of surprised that he's even listening to these Tell Me More shows.
I'm gonna do this. Yeah.
So this could be a continuation, man, of that 30-year war we've been having over who's the real Tennessee stud.
Yeah, I want to do this in Rob's voice. Why were you always Grandpa's favorite?
Yeah, boy, this is a good one, Rob. So all right, so to Rob in Seminole.
Okay.
I'm going to answer your question, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with this answer.
Okay.
So I might as well go ahead and while we're at it, I might as well add our cousin Jimmy Golden into this answer as well.
All right.
I'm going to answer this for two of you guys. Why I would be Grandpa's favorite.
Right.
And Grandpa kind of threw me off because we never referred to Roy as Grandpa. We always called him Papa.
Right.
So I think Rob threw the Grandpa in there, maybe thinking that, well, Ron won't figure out. Well, okay. So anyway, so this answer, Dave, is going to be short. I can tell you that. So Rob W. in Seminole and Jimmy Golden, who lives in Maryville, Tennessee. If you're listening, Jimmy, and y'all have got a little thing going here, man, you're going to laugh a little bit about it. Well, here's my answer. And actually, you both know the answer to that question. The question was, why was I always Papa's favorite? Okay, I'm going to tell you guys for the 50th time why. Because you two were always wild and crazy. You were either trying to ride his ponies to death by running them all day long in snow, up to their bellies deep, and then or either laying on your stomachs on Roy's big old huge gasoline tank with the cover open and snorting gas fumes.
Oh my God!
Until you were both almost dead, and every other bad thing the two of you could get into while I was always watching over both of you, man. I saved you guys' lives so many times, it's crazy, So maybe I'm going to tell you the answer here real quickly. Maybe Roy could tell that I was going to grow up and you guys never would. So no wonder I was his favorite.
All right. Well, there you have it. There's the answer to question number 5 from Rob W. in Seminole, Florida. All right, this is a lot of fun, Stud. This has been another great Tell Me More show, Ron. Good job.
Well, before we go today, I got to ask this one, man, and because something didn't happen in this one that's happened in all the other one. Where's the Aussie and his little dog Lily, man? I can't believe they didn't send something. I mean, no question, nothing for this one.
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to say anything, Ron, but there is a message that was sent for Lily, Wok's little dog.
Oh, okay. So either Wok or I will go ahead and tell me what it is, so I can try to figure out what Wok is doing today.
Okay.
Hey, aren't you? Well, first of all, Dave, let me just back up.
Well,
aren't you a little bit embarrassed to say that the letter came from a dog or had something to do with his dog?
Aren't you?
This crazy Aussie's got you going too, I think.
Aren't you embarrassed, Ron?
He's crazy, man. Dogs don't talk, and they certainly don't write letters, Dave. And so what did Lily the dog say before we end this Tell Me More show?
Okay, these are not my words, Ron. These words come from Lily. I am now, ladies and gentlemen, I will read a note from a dog. Lily the dog in Australia says, Mr. Fuller, there seems to be a misunderstanding. The sugar hold that you mention often is brutal and not the type of sugar hold I prefer. I offered to teach you my version of the sugar hold a fortnight or so ago. I'm assuming that's some sort of Australian speak.
That's 2 weeks in Australia.
Okay. Simply a nice bit of sugar from a little lick on the cheek. I want nothing more, says Lily. Oh, my God. I just read
the end of it.
That's it. I just read that. I did. Yeah. So, wait. There's a
Oh,
PS.
there's more.
There's a PS. I'll be. Lily goes on to say, I'll be the official mascot of Southeastern Rewind, and Wok will be the official Australian correspondent. What do you say to that, mate? So, all right, Ron, you're the one to answer this. What do you say to that? You and Lily, are you two gonna lick and make up?
Oh, you're having fun, ain't you, Dave? Wow. This is wow. I don't really know how to answer all this, man. I've answered everything else pretty good, but this one kind of takes it over the edge, you know. So I guess I'm going to answer it the same way I do to you, Dave, on Studcast. You know, I'm going to kayfabe you, and I'm going to answer this question next week.
I'm just rolling my eyes and shaking my head at this point. Okay, and one thing before we go, I think you told me to remind you about something pretty special that's happening that has to do with the Funk Brothers. What is that about?
Yeah, thank you very much, man. Let's get serious here just for a second on the end. There is a piece of video done at least 20 years ago by Les Thatcher. It has never been edited. It has never been shown anywhere in the world. It is the two Funk brothers, Terry Funk and Dory Funk Jr., in a 1 hour. You will hear the control room talking to them and everybody else. You'll quickly understand that this was never edited. But I think fans are going to find this. It's another example of the deal we did with Mac recently called an extra. This is another Southeastern Rewind extra. It is the two Funk brothers in a really, really wonderful interview that never got edited. And it's going to be coming up in the next few days. So please pay attention, and we'll be ringing that bell when it goes.
All right. And about how long ago did this happen?
At least 20 years ago, Les says, and maybe even more.
Wow. And it's about an hour long?
It's close to an hour. He thinks it's close to an hour. And
all right.
And the two people that I have listened to it say, Ron, it's unbelievable. So yeah, that's all I've got. I've never had a chance to hear it myself yet.
All right, and you'll send us a notification whenever it's ready, and we'll be able to see it on YouTube.
As every time when something new's posted, I'm going to ring everybody's bell that has subscribed.
All right, there it is. It's another Southeastern Rewinds. Tell me more. Where the Tennessee stud Ron Fuller answered 5 questions about today's Studcast, which was Studcast number 7, the 7th original Studcast, called Ron is Drowning. And it's now on Ron's new home on YouTube. And folks, remember to find Southeastern Rewind on YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell to get reminders, as we were just talking about, on when the greatest stories and events in wrestling will be dropped on YouTube. And be sure to tell your friends about Southeastern Rewind. For Ron Fuller, I'm David Summers, and we'll be back soon with another Tell Me More.